Hey folks, and welcome to Dr. Ryan Talks. So this week I'm going to touch on, this week's going to be slightly different, and I'm going to touch on an incident that happened at work. Now some of you who follow me for a little bit longer might have remembered when I posted about this a couple of months ago. And basically it was an incident where I encountered racist language at work. But the thing is that it wasn't from a colleague, it was actually from a patient. So I was on call, and for my surgical job what that meant was assessing patients who might need to be admitted for surgery. And as part of that job I often have medical students who would come around with me. Now what I try and do when I have medical students is I try and get them as involved as I can. So the agreement I came to with the medical student was that they would take the history and examine the patient, and then I would scribe and write in the notes and give them some feedback afterwards. So we go and see this lady together, who's one of the patients who's come in, and she's in her 60s and she's come in with her husband. And what happened was, when she was telling us about how she became more and more unwell, she said something. She said, "And so doc, what I need to say is that my urine, it turned brown. I tell you, brown." Okay, so the thing was, she said it in such a nonchalant way, it didn't even click to her that it might be unacceptable. So then I looked at her husband and he literally hasn't reacted at all. So then what happens is, she's telling the story and it's as if nothing has even happened. And then what happened is that kind of shock turned to a mixture of like disbelief and then anger. But then when the anger subsided, it kind of just felt quite awkward. Now where I was really lucky is that the medical student was taking the history, and so what that gave me is it gave me time. Now what I could see was that what happened had obviously made him uncomfortable as well, but he managed to carry on. So he took the rest of the history and he examined her, and that gave me time to consider my own feelings first of all, and then how I was going to deal with this. So as I say, 10 minutes passed by, he finishes the history, he finished the examination, we kind of talk about a plan, and then we've basically kind of come to the end of the consultation or the assessment. Okay, so now I have a bit of a confession. It was really tempting not to bring it up. Now hear me out. We're always taught in medical school about professionalism and about developing a rapport, and I think this really highlights the injustice of any type of discriminatory language or instance really, is that the burden is often on the person who's experienced it to kind of call out or address that behaviour, as if having to go through that experience wasn't enough. Okay, so despite this temptation not to bring it up, my sense of justice and my sense of needing to set an example to the medical student prevailed. Now, all the lessons I think about that we were taught about in medical school, about handling delirious patients, about managing complaints, about managing kind of angry relatives, one of the things which we distinctly did not cover is how to handle discriminatory behaviour from the people that you're trying to look after. Now what's good about this situation is that obviously she didn't address it to me, or it didn't feel like it was used at me at the very least. But still, being in the presence of someone who nonchalantly uses this kind of language is kind of, it's pretty aggravating. It's pretty unsettling. And I think that the lessons on how to address this behaviour are really important for doctors to learn, and actually for all healthcare professionals, really. So I brought it up. Oh, before I go, I need to bring something up with you, something that's a bit uncomfortable. When you were describing your urine, you used a word beginning with the letter N. Now that's a word which is really quite offensive, and it's not a word that I think you should ever be using here or anywhere else. Language is really important, and I don't want us to upset each other. Ooh, yeah, my urine, it was dark brown I meant to say. Okay, so the fact that neither her nor her husband even clocked that this was unacceptable behaviour really highlighted the fact that actually, it's probably in her vocabulary, it's probably language that she uses on a daily basis. And so that means that she's interacting with people on a daily basis who aren't addressing this language with her. And what it really highlighted for me is the responsibility that we all have to address discriminatory language or behaviour, whether it's affecting us or not, and whether the person means to cause offence or not, because that's the only way that we kind of make people change. So anyway, after saying that, I left with a medical student, and he turns to me and he says, wow, I can't believe that happened. Thanks for dealing with that. You know, I wasn't really sure what to do and how to handle it. And I felt really relieved by that because, you know, as I say, I've not had to do this in a professional way or call out this behaviour in a professional way before. And so hopefully, you know, from that experience, he'll go out and he'll make sure that he does the same thing. He calls out this behaviour where he sees it, not just in his professional life, but in his personal life as well, if he ever is unfortunate enough to come across it. But actually what this situation really highlighted is that all of us have something to learn. I hope you guys found that story thought-provoking. If you've ever had to handle this situation, particularly at work, then I want to hear from you. Or if you've not had to handle this situation before, how do you think that you would have handled a situation like that? Get in touch and leave your comments below. Thanks. And just to say, as ever, if you've enjoyed watching, then thank you so much. Hit the like button, comment below, hit subscribe, and I'll see you next time. And I think this really highlights the injustice.